record this meeting.
Oh,
Okay, got it. Okay, as I said, we're recording this this meeting for posterity, and a copy of it will be posted on the Sustainable Aurelia website for later viewing, especially for those people that signed up, were interested, but didn't quite make it for tonight. They can always watch it later. Welcome everyone to this Sustainable Aurelia webinar. As everybody knows or should know, hopefully, this is a Sustainable Aurelia month, and this is one in a series of webinars that were designed to promote sustainability in September of 2021. Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending. That's great. I'm actually glad to see that we have quite a few people on tonight, and that does make it worthwhile for us and our guest speaker. I'm Dave Van Elstein. I'm the Infrastructure and Energy Sector Chair of Sustainable Aurelia, and I'll be your host tonight. And before we begin the session, we're going to acknowledge the Indigenous community, and I would like to acknowledge that we stand today on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg people, which include the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Files Confederacy. We also acknowledge the Wendat Nation, Huron, who occupied these lands prior to the middle of the 17th century. We honor Indigenous history and culture and recognize the enduring presence of the Indigenous peoples on this land. We are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. And I apologize if my pronunciation of some of those names was not quite what it should have been. Tonight we have Ian Graham to talk about electrification of lifestyle. But first, just a few housekeeping things. Please keep yourselves on mute until we do a question and answer session. Ian says that he is quite happy to answer questions as he makes his presentation, but I would ask that you put that into chat, and then Jessica and I will monitor the chat as well, and bring those questions up as we go along. We'll also have an opportunity at the end to do a question and answer period. I would like to introduce Stan Matheson as well. He's the president of Sustainable Aurelia, and he's on the call tonight. And hi, Stan.
Hello, David. Thank you for chairing this and setting this evening up.
That's great. Yep, no problem. Thank you very much. And Jessica, who is Jessica Kearney, who is the student intern for Sustainable Aurelia. And Jessica, would you like to say hello? You don't see her face. She's got the logo for Sustainable Aurelia.
yeah. Hi, folks.
Anyway, she'll be our techie person for tonight. Okay, introducing Ian. Ian Graham runs Small Dog Studio. It's an off-the-grid recording studio, as well as teaching audio recording production classes at Wilfred Laurier University. He also has a passion for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and future technology. He owns two 10-kilowatt solar arrays, an off-the-grid cabin. He drives a Tesla Model 3 and has recently converted a gas pontoon boat to an electric boat with solar canopy charging. He is also an associate member of the EV Society from the Waterloo Region Electric Vehicle Association, collectively known as REVA. And at this point, I would like to hand it over to Graham. Oh, I'm sorry, hand it over to Ian.
Hey, that's okay. I get that all the time, Graham.
Yeah, it sounds like a first name.
It is, well, it is, yeah, for sure.
Anyway, thank you very much for coming tonight. And if you want to carry on from here, I'll put myself on mute. Okay?
No worries. So welcome to everyone. I appreciate you coming online, and we were just talking about how much maybe we are all like online tutorial or online zoomed out because this seems to be what we do now. But I do appreciate all of you who decided to come online and to kind of listen to me go on about different things that I've done over the last while. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm taking a guess you guys can see that. It's all good. And if I go to full screen, you still see that okay? Awesome. Okay, electrifying your life. And I noticed with the title, it said, you know, off-grid. This actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about off-grid / on-grid when it comes to at least the solar aspect of things, because when we get into off-grid living, that's a whole other kind of ball of wax. Not only in terms of just the technical, but even in some cases, I think maybe even some of the political aspect of things, and whether it's also makes sense to be totally off the grid rather than interacting with it. So anyways, this is just a quick picture of, this is my car from about 2-3 years ago when I first got it. And this is at a place just north of University of Waterloo called the Evolve 1 building. And it's basically one of a top building in Canada that is basically totally off the grid. And they just now done Evolve 2 building, and they're now working on the 3 as well, as far as I understand. There's multiple car chargers there, the solar for the electricity, but even on the building itself, geothermal, rainwater harvesting, etc. It's pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to play you a little video here, and this is just of the boat that I converted this summer with some buddies of mine. So if you can believe, I towed this thing 350 kilometers with the Model 3. It's a 21-foot pontoon boat. And I'll tell you, electric cars, they can tow. This is where our heart was going, like, okay, you know, this is not sinking. And the boat goes a blistering 10 kilometers an hour. It's a floating couch, basically. And you know what, where I am up north, it's not like we're in a hurry anyways. I'll tell you a little more details about the boat as we go through the seminar. My buddy who came up and just happened to be in Sudbury area came to see me and did some video. And of course, I love this shot. One morning that we were having coffee out on the deck, and we saw this huge heron go by us, and I looked around the corner where the boats were parked, and there was the heron perfectly landed on the solar panels. So I actually was able to get a nice shot of the heron here. Okay, electrifying your life. Well, there's multiple things that, you know, we electrify our life with every day. Everything from what's in our kitchen, from the coffee maker, our television, all those things that we basically take for granted. But now we are definitely in a transition where the electrification of our vehicles is coming back. It's not that this is new. Electrified cars was actually before even gas cars. And there's a kind of an interesting history that I, you know, encourage all of you to read about, especially with New York, where they had the horse and buggies, and then they went to the electrification of cars. And so this is something that we're hearing about all the time. We see the advertisements on TV from Ford with their Lightning truck, and GM has been talking about this. Volkswagen, it's awesome. We're seeing this is happening. And then, of course, the next part of electrification is actually our home, where we don't pull power in necessarily from the grid, but we put in solar panels to actually create our own power. And we can create our own power to power our homes, but also to interact with the grid as well. This is just quickly on the left side is a rental property that I have next door to me. These are both 10K systems. And This is on the right side is my recording studio. It's a separate building from my house. It's where I am right now. And it's an east-west configuration of 10 kilowatts of solar as well. Up north at the cabin, I actually last summer upgraded the system. And I will explain a little bit more what I upgraded the system from in a sec. But this is basically upgraded deck extension with solar panels on it. And of course, the challenge of electrifying a boat, and you'd be surprised what is happening now with the electrification of boats. So Maid of the Mist in Niagara Falls is now fully electric. In Kingston, they're taking delivery of a ferry that is fully electric. It actually was built in Romania. That is actually coming across the Atlantic Ocean, I think right now as we speak. And there is a lot of stuff actually happening in electrification of boats, more than you might actually, than what you might hear about. And of course, then you have the electrification of car and boat, where the car pulls the boat. To be really honest, man, this was a bit of a, whoo, is this going to work? Because I had towed with the car before, and multiple things, including building for the cabin with the deck and the solar panels. This boat, though, is like over 3,000 pounds, and my tow hitch and everything is rated for 2,000. I always know that they're conservative about those numbers, but with a little bit of proper hitch for the back and everything else, this actually worked out really well. And this is an electric car and a boat on a boat. So if you know the Chichimon, which goes from Tobermory to South Baymouth, I went from Kitchener to Owen Sound, charged up there to Tobermory, stayed overnight with some friends. I charged at a campsite that was there that had a charger, and then took the Chichimon, went across to South Baymouth, and then to my cabin, which is another 100 kilometers from there. Got lots of interesting looks, that's for sure. And then, of course, this is the off-grid cabin. This is absolute, for me, it's very, it's my sanctuary. My parents had purchased this cabin. It was built in 1934, and my parents had purchased this in 1993. They actually ran the lodge on Charlton Lake, and basically, with this cabin came up kind of through the rumor mill, if you want to say, that the owners were actually thinking of selling, and the owners in this case were actually the Brazilian priests, which is kind of I think a sect of the Catholic Church. And so my dad was able to get in and say, yeah, we're interested. And it's interesting with the logs, and it's peace. Let's put it that way. It's a nice getaway. Another view of the cabin. So you can see in the background there is waterfalls, and there's not just one set of waterfalls. There's actually two sets. The first one closest to the cabin, but if you look a little further up, you can almost see like this rock island, and that's like where two other kind of like smaller waterfalls go down. And I'll show you, there's a bridge actually that connects to that little rock island. And on there is where my dad basically did microhydro. So microhydro is basically, kind of think of it like a small version of Niagara Falls, where you have a turbine spinning in the water that's sending AC power and to a unit that will rectify it to DC power that then can charge 12-volt batteries. In this case is what we had. And so my dad had 4 12-volt batteries. This ran 24/7. He had satellite TV, satellite phone, and I think a few little like lights and stuff like that. And this was something he did in 99, 2000. And the turbine was originally used for the back of sailboats to charge their 12-volt batteries as they're, going through the wind. This would be on the back end, spinning away. And you can kind of see the turbine has a sled on it. So he had a gentleman weld the sled and actually build this bridge, which we could put in the turbine. And you also can see I've got two 60-watt panels on here. And this was just, me. I put these up probably a good 11 years ago. And when I was like really starting to play more with the solar aspect, and it was just kind of like another energy boost, if you want to say, for the batteries. But this system is not used at all anymore. So this is 2 springs ago, in 2020, and the ministry, the lakes are all connected. I'm actually on part of a 4-lake system, but this channel that goes to the waterfalls, if you follow it, goes then up higher to other waterfalls that goes to Cross Lake, and Cross Lake goes up to other waterfalls, which goes to Lang Lake, et cetera, et cetera. And the ministry in the spring is known to actually let out a little too much water. And in this case, I can't even get on the bridge, let alone put a waterfall hydrant in, let alone actually get at the solar panels, which, in this case, isn't even actually facing towards south, which I would want. And you can see a lovely big log that came down, and I had to wait a few weeks before this actually finally got down again, that I could actually kind of rectify everything and get it back to working order. So what I decided then to do, and this is like, you're now talking 20 years of technological change from when the micro hydro was being used to 11 years when those 60-watt panels were being used, and to what we are at now. So the panels, as you can see, here's my car towing, and I had 2 other buddies come up and help me build the deck, put the panels up and everything else. So the car was jam-packed. The trunk, the frunk, the cavity underneath the trunk, which where usually the gas tank is. And then there are 4 solar panels, a door that my neighbor had taken off from his home that he wasn't going to use anymore. I ended up using that for the power shed. But anyways, the key thing about these panels, each panel is 390, 400 watt bifacial, which means they get power from the front and also the back. So any reflections. Now, if any of you have ever did any research on what the sun does at its highest point, is it has a huge arc. So summertime, it's up high in the sky, and we get longer days because there's this huge arc to it. And then, of course, come December, and we get the shortest day of the year, the sun is at its lowest point, and the arc is much smaller, hence why we get a lot less hours of sunlight. So I'm at the cabin. It's not winterized. It's only meant for basically spring, summer, fall. And but come summertime, when the sun is starting to arc that much further out, these panels are already picking up energy on the back. The sun hasn't even gotten quite totally up. And from the back area, it's already getting power. Now, these panels, and this is where I think the electrifying your life is has a huge merit to it. I'm going to talk a little bit about costs. These panels, cost me about $400. So when you worked it out, it's actually not even, sorry, a little under 400. It was about 80 cents a watt. And in comparison to the panels that I put in my rental property 10 years ago for the microfit system, those were 210 watt panels that were $900 each. So I've doubled the power, and the cost of it is less than half even. The microhydro is no longer used anymore because microhydro is a 100-watt little generator. So if you worked out 24 hours and with inefficiencies, I might get maybe 1.8 to 1.9 kilowatts of power. These panels will do that in about less than 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half, maybe even less than that. So it became really clear and apparent that rather than trying to put in this microhydro, which is a bit heavy, and then also trying to find the perfect spot for the water to generate it and everything else, and the water levels are going up and then going down. This is no moving parts. It's stationary. It doesn't move anywhere, and it puts out way more power. So here we are building the extension onto the deck, and lots of fun because the rocks, of course, go down this way and makes it a little more, interesting to to do this. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Can provide references for where you would recommend purchasing. I will definitely give you some references for that as well. All right. Okay, just another 360 degree, or well, 180 degree view here that you can see. And then this is with the panels. So back with the deck being built, and then with the actual panels. The idea for doing this, this is actually south facing. This couldn't be a better spot. One of my panels here on the studio, turned out it got shattered. Not going to go into the long story of how it got shattered. It was actually an act of vandalism, but I came across it. It was shattered, but still intact. I took it up north. I thought I'll take it up north. I replaced it, and I'll play around with it. And I leaned it up against the deck box that was on the deck, and I would charge some other batteries with it and just play around with it. And anyways, that's where the idea came, is like, you know, the sun is always hitting just a little further out from the deck. And if I extend the deck and I build the panels south facing on an angle, that becomes kind of like the railing then as well. So this has actually worked out really well. Jasmine, how do you know which angle to place the bifacial panels to get maximum exposure? That all depends on your, I'm not sure if it's longitude or latitude, but these panels, if I'm correct, I think are at a 27-degree angle. And basically what you're going to go for is, what is the peak the sun is at? Latitude. Thanks, Stan. You're going to go with whatever the peak is for your sun at the highest point in the sky, and that is basically what you're basing it off. So I think, pretty sure in my case, it was 27 degrees. Angela suggests books, videos. Do you recommend someone who does not know a lot about going electric? Let me think about that. The best suggestion, books and videos, is YouTube and Google. And there are lots of books. I've seen them on Amazon, but it is definitely, there's lots of information out there, but Google is a great resource as well. All right. So with doing the solar, I also needed to build a power shed that would hold the batteries, the inverter, the charge controller, and get all the wiring over to it. And this is my doggy Bandit helping me out here. And I originally made it just as a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and would walk in and pretend like, okay, here's where my batteries would be, there's where this would be. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is too small. I'm gonna be too cramped. I still gotta put the walls up. And so I actually extended the building out. So I think it's more like a 10x8 platform. This is my first time building this power shed. So, and again, you know, to your point about books and everything else, thank you, Google, and finding different websites with plans and following them as best I can. It was definitely a learning process for me to do. Anyways, you can see on here is the charge controller on the left side of the black box. It's a Midnight Solar Classic charge controller. Beside it is a fuse panel, and as fuses for where the solar comes in, that goes to the charge controller, then out from the charge controller back into the fuse panel, which then goes to the batteries. And then from the batteries is that big, you can see a big fuse there. And that's basically, you know, you want to make sure you're well protected with fuses that goes to the inverter, because solar can be, I'm not gonna say it's like dangerous, but you want to be smart about it. Before you turn everything on, make sure you're connected to the fuses, and you just, you know, just be cautious about everything that you're doing. Think about, you know, where the electricity is kind of coming in. Just checking the chat window one more time here. Nope, that's good. All right. Okay, so the system here is 4 390-watt bifacial panels, Midnight Solar Classic 250 charge controller, a Trace 4,000-watt 24-volt inverter, and 4 6-volt batteries. Okay, just quick to help you understand. The charge controller is basically takes the power from the solar and basically changes the voltage, because the panels now are like high voltage, and brings the voltage down to 24 volts to charge the batteries, but also is a protector to say, oh, well, the batteries are actually charged enough. They don't need anything more. So we get into what's called a float state. So any excess power coming from the solar is actually not given to the batteries. But let's say I have a 19.5 cubic fridge now in the cabin. I got rid of the propane fridge, and it's awesome because it runs all the time. I can go there. I got beer and cold ice cream, frozen ice cream. It's working. I'm not having to turn on the propane fridge anymore. But the solar, if the batteries are fully charged, the solar is actually now fully powering that fridge. If I decide to want to vacuum, sunny days are awesome to vacuum because the batteries are already charged and I'm just using the power that's excess. If I'm looking at doing down the road an extension to the cabin and actually putting in a washing machine. And so I get a sunny day, I can do my laundry and I can hang it out, of course, in the sun to dry at that point. The inverter is what we use to convert the battery power, which is direct current, DC, and we convert that to AC, alternating current. And that's what the fridge runs on, my lights, stereo. Eventually, I'm probably going to put like a television in there. I'm actually hoping that Starlink will become more accessible, which is the satellite internet. And then I can actually, stream Netflix and watch television if I want to, besides, of course, being outside in this beautiful scenery. So, all right, give you a little history on my car. So I toured for 15 years with my band, and I would say from 2004 on, like, gas prices were starting to go up. And at the time I drove a Chevy Astro van, and gas prices going up, getting expensive. The Chevy Astro van finally kind of gave up the ghost. And I looked around and I did some Google again, research on alternatives to fuel. And basically, I learned about Rudolph Diesel and basically creating the diesel engine. And his idea was for farmers to be able to grow their crops, but also to be able to fuel their equipment. So he, basically ran his first diesel engine on peanut oil. So I found in 2007, I found a 1994 GMC 3500 one-ton extended van. This thing was huge. And I didn't necessarily convert very much to run on vegetable oil. The biggest conversion I did was put in a couple of heaters in the actual fuel line. The first heater was an electric one that ran off the battery just for the initial heating. And then the second one was coolant heating. So as the engine ran, the radiator coolant would then heat up the vegetable oil and eventually modify the system to then actually go right into the tank and heat the whole tank up as well. So the oil would, especially wintertime, not congeal and would run. I drove to Cape Breton on this thing, and I didn't spend a dime on gas. And gas at that time was $1.50 a liter. And I think we're going back to that area again. I saw it today was $1.38. So I'm not sure up in Aurelia what it's at, but I'm sure it's up there too. Now, as 8 years of doing this vegetable oil van, it's not the cleanest job in the world. It basically, I had 3 of these barrels. 2 of them were used to collect waste vegetable oil. And then one of them was actually to use this filter that's on the stand there and filter it through. And, I'd have clean oil, which I could then transfer to the tank. Now, to do 1 barrel of collecting oil and filtering it, everything was roughly an hour. And I look at everything as time is money. And to pay for a tank of fuel at that time for this van would have been well over $100 to fill it. Well, I look at in 1 hour, I just made $100. I saved myself $100. And you'll see what I'm going to mention about electric cars as well, especially when I hear these people go who are, with the gas cars. where we start doing price comparisons on some of this stuff. So my first electric car was a Chevy Volt 2015. And this was the gateway drug to electric. And I say that because it's a plug-in hybrid. This car would do anywhere from 70 to 80 kilometers of charge, and then would have about 500 kilometer of hybrid with the gas. And, you know, on most cases, we're driving 50 to 60 kilometers a day, maybe not even that. And I found with this car, though, when I went on longer trips, you know, once that 70, 80 kilometers is gone, it's like, oh, I want more. And, you know, so that was kind of like edging me on to get something else. And that's when I picked up a Model 3 2018. My neighbor around the corner from me actually had put a day one reservation on the car. I remember the night that they announced this car, I watched the web preview of it. And I was just like jaw dropped, like, this is amazing, beautiful car. And, you know, a lot of us, you know, we could only take what was given to us on the web until we actually got our hands on the car, which most of us bought this car sight unseen, not even test drove, nothing. And anyways, I took my neighbor's reservation because she said it was too much car for her. She didn't need 500 kilometers of range, and it just wasn't something she wanted to keep going with. So I ended up taking it, and I still have the car, and I absolutely love the thing. And it's really proven itself to be quite a workhorse. As you've seen, I pulled the pontoon boat with it. I definitely had a few guys in their big trucks look at me like I'm a little crazy, but you know what? It just shows what this car can do. All right. This car, electric cars, a lot of the models now are coming with 400 plus kilometers. You have home charging. And I apologize, one sec. I'm going to just get out of full screen because I need to just adjust a few things here. Basically, the people in the profile kind of comes up and it's hard for me to see stuff. There we go. Your home charging accounts for like at least 90% of where you're going to charge your car. A lot of people keep, you know, like, geez, I'm nervous. I don't know about going to an electric car because, like, where am I going to charge it? Yeah, with 500 kilometers on the Model 3, I guarantee you that 90% of the time you're going to charge it at home. So when I go north to the cabin, I charge it once. I stop in Perry Sound for 20 minutes, charge the car up, and I'm on my way. When I come back home, I basically, you know, there's a Tesla charger in Espanola, Tesla charger in Sudbury, but there's also all the other types of chargers as well, level 2 charging. And then of course there's level 3 charging for like Chevy Bolt, the Kona, etc. And they would have, or the Nissan Leaf. And those ones would be, level 3 would be called like CCS or Chatamo. So where do you charge? Well, Guelph just put in 20 chargers. Just the city of Guelph. At the end of August, they had 20 more chargers in their city. And so it's only growing vastly. And of course, with the range we have at 400 plus kilometers, our needs for charging are becoming, I don't want to say less and less, but we don't need to stop quite as much anymore. My maintenance has been basically a windshield, washer fluid, wiper blades. I haven't even done that yet. Swap the tires for the winter. And other than that, the only thing I've really done is I've pulled out a couple of nails from tires that I've gotten probably from construction sites. And I did have upper control arms, which was actually a common sort of issue with the Model 3, but under warranty and, you know, easy to swap out. Now, electric cars are 8 to 10 times cheaper than gas. Let me explain a little about this. As you know, as gas prices go up, it costs more, of course, to fill your car. When you charge at home and you're charging off peak, so from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., you can easily charge a car, and 500 kilometers is about $8. And if you're commuting a lot, which a lot of people here in Kitchener commute to Toronto, it only makes sense to go to an electric car. especially one with 400 plus kilometer range, because those savings will add up. Is the electric car more expensive initially? Yeah, it is. But you're going to find within 2 to 3 years, especially for those who commute, that it doesn't take much for you to get the savings on that. So Stan, just, to make a point here, he said it costs him about $300 for 20,000 kilometers of driving, including supercharging. Level 2 charging at home, overnight off-peak rates, and he changed wiper blades and cabin filters. I did do cabin filters as well. That's a good point on that, Stan. I did my own cabin filters. But here's another thing. And again, for those of you who are driving gas cars, please understand, I don't want to sort of like point fingers or anything like this. If anything, I'm hoping I can give you perspective on all this. But some people will say, well, your electric car, it takes forever to charge. No, it doesn't. Number one, overnight. Yeah, if I'm at 0 to charge it overnight, it might be about 6 hours. Okay, that's a bit of time. At a supercharger, from 0 to 80% is about 15 minutes. Okay, it's not that long. But here's the perspective, and this is what I like giving to a lot of the gas heads who kind of like say, well, I can fill up my gas car in 5 minutes. No, you can't. And here's why. Your gas is 8 to 10 times more expensive than what my electricity is. And you had to go and work. If you work at a job that was, say, $25 an hour, minus your taxes, deductions, whatever else you got on there, you probably had to work 4 to 5 hours just to pay for that tank of fuel. And I don't know about you, but when I mentioned about time is money, I like doing other things with my life. I'm a foodie. I have no problem with going and trying new restaurants. And I like the fact that the savings that I have, I can go try some different restaurants and kind of treat myself. So that's something with the gas. And it's only going to get, I think, worse. I don't think the price of gas is necessarily going to go down again. It's already manipulated as it is. So lastly, software updates, at least with the Tesla. I'm not saying the other companies don't do software updates, but the Tesla is a very unique one because, we have Netflix and YouTube in our car, which you might be like, well, what's the point of that? Remember, I mentioned that I'm a foodie. Well, with COVID, I would sometimes do takeout at restaurants and I would sit in the car and watch some Netflix while I'm having my food. It's kind of like an interesting date night, if you want to call it. But anyways, you get some interesting software updates on the entertainment side, but you also get interesting software updates also on the safety side. So I have autopilot in the car. 90% of my drive to the cabin, which is a good 5.5+ hour drive, 90% of that drive is on autopilot. And it's actually saved my life a few times because of seeing vehicles that I normally would not have seen. All righty. So here's the gas car preventative maintenance menu at our Canadian Tire. And, just a wheel alignment. Well, that's something that we can get on electric cars as well. But a cooling system flush and fill, $73. Lube, oil, and filter. You got to do those 2-3 times a year. There's another $40, $50, brake inspection. Electric cars don't really get much in the way of brake inspections because 90 to 95% of the braking is done by the electric motor. We barely even touch our brakes. And charging system test. I love that one, $56. My charging system, if I plug it in and something's not working, then yeah, I'll probably have to call Tesla service, but don't think I have too much of a problem. But even transmission fluid and filter change, $113. Yikes. Fuel injector flush, $150. Yeah, not fun. All right. Let's talk about the home and solar. So this is a rental property that I have, and I put up the solar now going on 10+ years. And they're 10K systems, and they were part of the microfit program where we actually would feed our energy back out into the grid. And however many kilowatts that we put out, we got paid per kilowatt for that. And as the microfit program grew and as solar panel prices started going down, the microfit program would pay less per kilowatt because the panels and the equipment were getting a lot less expensive. Now, to give you an idea, this system, and I installed it myself, I had someone actually engineer and then someone else build the trellis part of it because that was an agreement that I had to get done for the building permit. But in terms of the solar panels and everything, I installed that myself with the help of a few friends. But this cost me $80,000. So 2 systems, $160,000. And that's for a 10K system. Well, let's fast forward to today and what you can do. We have a system called net metering. And net metering has been around for a while as well. And what net metering is basically you figure out from your hydro bills, take a few years of your hydro bill and see how many kilowatts that your actual home uses. And you build a system that is, goes with those kilowatts that are being used. So you might have a home that doesn't use a lot of electricity and you might need a 5 or 6 kilowatt system. Or you might have a home where you've got a hot tub, you've got some car charging that you're doing, electric cars now, and you want a 10K system. Well, a 10K system installed today, you can get usually for around $20,000. And so again, put that in perspective, this system here that I put in for $80,000 that I installed myself and also has 48 panels. Today's system I've seen 10K systems with about 32 to 36 panels. So we just use, 10 plus less panels on the roof. So we don't need as much space now for all this stuff as well. Another system you can look at is net metering with battery backup. And that would be like a Tesla Powerwall. There's other Powerwalls you can kind of get as well. And that's more or less of the energy, you basically the grid goes down. You can have net metering, but your house is basically going to be off the grid and not feeding back into it if the grid actually goes down. But with the battery backup, the beauty of it is like at least you can have some major appliances like your fridge and that run and some lights and stuff. You could even, if you want to, you could put your whole house on that battery backup as well. If you remember in Texas, they had those huge cold weather and storms, everything else, and the electrical grid went down. I would watch on Facebook a lot of people who had solar with the Tesla Powerwalls, and they're like, yeah, we're fine. It's been 4 days. Yeah, we're fine. No problems. And everyone else is shivering away because they have no electricity. And then the last thing is off-grid. And off-grid is basically getting back to my cabin. To do hydro in my cabin back in the 90s when my parents got the place was about $75,000 to bring hydro to it. Not worth it. And today to go off grid, yes, it's a lot cheaper, but I think you need to really ask yourself do you really need to totally go off grid, or can you interact with the grid with a net metering system? And worst case scenario, you have a little bit of a battery backup to keep, like I said, some of your main appliances going so that you're good that way. To go totally off grid, it's going to start adding up in the batteries. And that's where the issue kind of comes about. Just looking on the chat here. Behind the meter storage for those of us who are on grid because of tree cover, but want to electrify and still save money and save the grid from being overpowered. Behind the meter storage. Stan, that's something I would have to look into. I don't know very much about behind the meter storage. I'm taking a guess, if I'm correct, Stan, is that where you don't have solar, but you buy power off peak and you store it, but then you use it on peak to save you some money? Yes. Okay. That is what he's saying. Okay. Cool. So if you say you can't put up solar, basically what that system is you have a battery, and between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., you can actually charge that battery up with, the low hydro rate. And then during the day, let's say you work from home, rather than having the power come from the grid and you're paying a higher rate, you're actually using the battery to because you've already bought it at a lower rate, and it just cycles through that system. So another interesting way to save money on it went. Okay. A friend of mine just actually, who is up in Aurelia, he kind of made a joke to me because he's wanting me to look at a solar panel for a 24-volt battery for one of his airplanes. And he says, should I go to Canadian Tire? And haha. So I'm not haha about Canadian Tire. When you look at the prices, this is two 100-watt panels for $400. Okay. Compare it, $1,059. Okay. Canadian Tire, no offense to them, they are the worst for finding your solar panels. So to the lady who was asking, where do you go? In Barrie, it's Home Energy Solutions, HES. I think it's HESC. Basically, they can put you in touch with a solar installer, but they are the solar equipment distributor. There used to be another company called Sentinel in Barrie. Sentinel has now been bought out by HES, as far as I understand. And so I would give them a call if you're looking to find out about buying solar. But to give you guys an example, these are 100-watt panels at $200 each. My pontoon boat has 440-watt bifacial panels, so top and back. And I got those for $307. So when you work that out, what is that, 70 cents a watt compared to $2 a watt? So be really cautious and you go to Canadian Tire and using something like that. Sorry, just trying to go to the chat here again. David, looking for a grid-tied system with battery backup, but knew not where to start for an honest company. That's a good, valid point. Also need to replace AC. Do I go with a heat pump? David, I can actually put you in touch with a friend of mine who has got a 10K net metering system, and it's a brand new house in Listwell, and he has a heat pump that he absolutely loves. Yes, there's government incentives. David, you mentioned about that. Solar actually has a $5,000 government incentive, and my buddy did a 10K system without the government incentives, but he does have one of those heat pumps. And if you might like David, I have my contact information. You're more than welcome to get a hold of me, and I'll put you in touch with my buddy on that. Okay, the solar electric pontoon boat. This boat was a challenge. And I don't mean just in building it. It was a challenge because 2 years ago, the lodge, the owner had taken out a pontoon boat and had basically taken everything off to then put brand new plywood sheets in the middle with new carpet and just redo everything. And while he was doing this, one of the guys was helping him. And I just said, I think it'd be really cool to get a pontoon boat and convert it from gas to electric and put up a solar canopy that charges batteries. And in not so many good terms and good language, he was like, what are you talking about? Everything in the world runs on gas. You can't do that. Okay, challenge accepted. Biggest problem for me that I would have gotten this done about a year earlier, was finding a pontoon boat that I liked. So, and also with COVID, as some of you may know, that COVID made things crazy in terms of recreational vehicles, recreational aspects of things. If somebody put up something, it was gone. And so this boat actually, the gentleman I bought it from had told me he had gotten so many inquiries on the boat, and he was just intrigued, I think, with what I was wanting to do with the boat. And he was really good. And he said, I'll sell it to you. And he gave me the price that he asked for it was what was on Kijiji. And he realized after all the inquiries, he probably could have sold it for a lot more on this thing. Back to the chat, just one sec. Come on, chat. Okay, David, that would be great. Stan, what type of batteries do you use in your various applications? Lithium, AGM, or flooded lead acid? Okay, so that's a good question to ask. In the terms of the cabin, I have flooded lead acid batteries. Why? It's what I got at the time. Could I go to lithium? Yeah. Why haven't I gone to lithium? One of the reasons is because the system is only from spring, summer, and fall. Wintertime, with lithium batteries, you got to be cautious if you don't have some way of controlling the temperature. So all our electric cars, we actually have coolant that helps to keep the batteries warm. In fact, we can preheat the car, not only the cabin of the car with our electrical power from the home, but it actually helps with the batteries as well. So I stuck with lead acid just for the time being for the cabin. And because I have so much solar power and my needs for the cabin are not, I have a fridge, a stereo, soon I'm going to do a television. I have lights. I charge my, laptop. Like that's the other thing too. The electrification of our lives is made so much easier because the equipment that we use now is so much more efficient. The fridge that I've got is a 19.5 cubic foot fridge, and it runs on the power of basically a 45-watt light bulb. Nothing. Okay. So keep that in mind. In terms of batteries for this boat, this is using Tesla batteries that were from a salvaged Model S. Now, the batteries I bought in 2 years previous because a friend of mine sent me a Facebook marketplace ad that somebody was selling Tesla batteries. And of course, he sent it to me, big mistake, got in touch with the guy, ended up buying 4 of the batteries. He had 6 left, bought 4 of them. The batteries were $1,500 each. Now, that may seem like a lot of money, especially when you add up 4 of them at $6,000. But keep in mind, these batteries hold 1.5 kilowatts of power. 5.2 kilowatts of power. So there is like 20 kilowatts of power in these 4 batteries. An average home is 20 to 30 kilowatts a day. So there's a lot of power in this stuff. And, you might pay a little bit more, what seems to be a little bit more, but when you look at the energy density, and for a battery that is 55 pounds, to have 5.2 kilowatts of power in 55 pounds is amazing. Because in lead acid, we'd be in the hundreds of pounds to actually do the same thing. All right. Once again on the chat. My apologies because I'm on full screen. I can't have my mouse for some reason. Report the stat about the average home usage versus, repeat the stat. Okay, so Jasmine, basically the average home uses about 20 to 30 kilowatts of electric power, the average home. This boat's got 20 plus kilowatts of battery. So if I wanted to, this could easily power a home. And I'm talking about a home with, of course, the usage goes up the more people you have. But let's say 2 to 3 person home, you can easily do that, no problem. So, all right. The solar on the pontoon boat is 3 440 watt bifacial Canadian solar panels. These are the panels that I got for $307 each. Keep in mind, my microfish system with a 210 watt panel, each panel was $900 10 plus years ago. This is how much solar has come down. The batteries, 5.2 kilowatt Tesla batteries. The batteries, there's also a charge controller. It's the same as the solar at the cabin, where that little shed was I built, has a charge controller. This also has a charge controller, but it also is monitored by this Lithium Solutions BMS, which stands for Battery Management System. And what this is basically, think of lithium batteries like an ice cube tray, where when you go to put the water in, you can't just dump the water in. It's got little pockets, and you want to fill those a little bit at a time until you've got it nice and even. And so lithium batteries, at least with the Tesla batteries, they look like a whole bunch of like AA cells. They're all kind of joined together. And the BMS basically says to the charge controller, oh, we need some charging over in this battery, some charging in that point, etc. And it just charges it as even as possible. And then the last thing on this solar pontoon boat is the 20 horsepower Elco motor. Now, the motor, I always love when people say, oh, this electric boat motors must be a really new thing. They're just getting into that. Well, on the side of my boat motor, it says electric since 1893. So this company has been around a long time. They do inboard electric motors, outboard electric motors, and they do inboard hybrid motors where it's electric and maybe a diesel as well. And an interesting fact that was told to me by one of the sales rep was that one of their biggest clients is in South America. I think he said Chile. Price of gas and the availability of gas is getting high and difficult to find. And for marinas and that, a lot of them are now switching to electric boat motors. And in the States where the company is based of, he says, we sell these motors, but we still have a bit of an issue with some of the marinas wanting to sell it because just like the gas automobile industry, they make a lot of money on service. So it's one of those things that's, it's a definitely interesting perspective. I got told that, if I had kids, but my great great grandchildren would be the first ones to actually do any service on the actual electric motor. This boat motor does have service for the lower body unit. If you know anything about boat motors, there is oil in the lower body unit for the gears and stuff. This motor does still have that. So you do kind of have to do that on a seasonal basis. But in general, yeah, you don't have to touch anything on it. Just going to go to the chat one more time. Okay. The voltage for the Tesla batteries are 48 volts. So that brings me up to the 20 horsepower Elco motor is a 48 volt system. If I could, and I can still, I would have gone to the 50 horsepower motor system, but it's 96 volts, so it's double. And the reason I didn't do that was two reasons. Number one, it's double the price. So that added up. This boat motor was about $4,800 American. And if you know boat motors, this actually is not far off from gas motors. It's actually not that much more expensive than a gas motor. But then the other problem was the charge controller. Trying to find a 96 volt charge controller was difficult. There was a couple companies that had them that I don't know that I really heard much about them. I didn't necessarily want to trust it. I went with a company called Victron, and they're huge in solar. I can use my phone and monitor what's going on with my charge controller through Bluetooth. It's amazing. But yeah, that was another reason. It's like, until I see other companies doing 96 volt charge controllers, I don't know about that. All right. I'm going to show you a few little slides here about building the boat. Okay, so this is my good friend of mine, Mark. And Mark, I went to public school with Mark and his brother, Mike. Mike stored the boat at his place up in North Waterloo. And Mark made the mistake of saying, like, hey, as kids, like my dad and my brother and I, we used to work at a marina. Like, if you need some help, I'll give you a hand. I'm not sure if he's regretting that now. I don't think he is, but it was a job. And so the first thing that we did was we started building the battery boxes. So if you look, there are actually two battery boxes here, and each battery box holds two Tesla batteries. And if I remember, it was 55 pounds for a battery. So now we're talking 110 pounds for a box. And then with the wood and everything else, you're looking at probably 115 to 120 pounds of a box. So times that by two, we're getting 200 plus pounds. Even to lift one box, I have done it. Yeah, it's a bit of weight on there. Here's the boxes in the back of the Tesla being delivered to the boat. The charge controller is in the gray box, and everything is connected. If you look, the little red connectors are called Anderson connectors. This is where we connected the batteries together, the charge controller into the first battery bank, and the boat motor into the last battery bank. And then you can also see these little round things in the middle. Those were the connectors for the battery management system that we used. We got a deck box on sale at Home Hardware for $89 and double protection here. So the batteries, we ended up taking the back seat out of the boat and put the deck box in, put the batteries in. The deck box, of course, can also be locked, which is nice, although I really highly doubt there's going to be many people who are going to try and lift by themselves 120 pounds of batteries for one box. So, and then to put the canopy together, Mark is a mechanical engineer. And of course, with mechanical engineering, he's got some great ideas. He basically put me in touch with a guy who had a junkyard backyard. I don't know how his wife put up with it, but we contacted him and said, hey, do you have extruded aluminum? And extruded aluminum is basically these long posts. And in the middle, it has a shaft, a little place that you can actually put stuff in and fasten stuff to it. And that's where these guys come into play. They basically slide into the shaft, and then we can put in bolts and fasten stuff together. And some of the stuff that we fastened together was 3D printed. So on the left side is actually, these would be put into the shaft, and they would actually clamp the solar panel down so that the solar panel would not lift off anymore. And we also did do some other aluminum brackets as well for the solar panels, just as a backup, especially too when you're on the water, can get some pretty crazy winds. So we want to make sure that was in place. The brackets that's on the right was basically for the canopy to allow the rails. There's two rails, and one rail is stationary and the other rail slides up and down on this bracket. So you can see here where we're putting on the stationary rails, and then you can see the orange brackets where the second rail would then slide down onto it. And this is what would hold the solar panels and allow it to go up and down. So here we're putting on the second rail. And you can see Mark is holding a bracket as well. Here we are putting the solar panels on. You can see the orange brackets that would then slide out for the next panel that comes into play. On the deck box, you can see there's some stainless steel fasteners that we had those custom fabricated from a guy in St. Mary's. Turns out the guy that I bought the boat, the batteries for the boat from, I contacted him to see if he knew of someone, because again, with COVID, the companies we were contacting, they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. And at this point, we're like, July was just about done. And I really want to get this thing out in the water. So this guy in St. Mary's actually did this up for us. And it turns out he actually had a pontoon boat that he had built a cabin on the pontoon boat. So he could actually sleep on it, had a kitchen, and he had some solar panels for the lights and stuff like that on. So he was pretty intrigued with this whole system as well. On the left side is what I was mentioning about my phone having Bluetooth connectivity to the charge controller. So here you can see the solar is putting out 1151 watts at 116 volts, 9.9 amps. But when you convert that 116 volts down to 48 volts, well, the amperage goes up. There's a whole lesson on electricity and all that stuff as well. But we're putting 23 amps, which is quite good, into the batteries. We figured that it was what we call a 10-to-1 ratio. So when the electric motor was full throttle, with those 4 batteries, I'm getting anywhere from about 2 to 2.5 hours of power with a full battery, which is pretty good. With the solar onto it, basically the electric motor would use 10 units for every 1 unit of solar being put in at an optimized sort of thing. So one thing that this has really taught me as well is I cannot charge my pontoon boat unless it's in the sun. So we're at nighttime. I can't go and dock it and bring in what's called shore power, which is basically your grid power, and plug in the boat and charge it overnight and have a full battery in the morning. Could I do that? Yeah, the equipment's out there to do that, but my cabin's off grid. So you can see where you kind of you learn a lot about, energy conservation. You look ahead at the forecast is like, oh, the next day is going to be kind of cloudy and looks like showers are coming in. Maybe we won't go on the pontoon boat quite as much. The next day after that, it's like beautiful sun. Okay, we'll definitely head out. We've been out on the pontoon boat for like 4 or 5 hours easily, tooting around, fishing, and just enjoying things. It's a floating couch. It's the best way to describe it. The picture on the right is the BMS. So the state of charge here you can see is 91.94%. It's basically, I charge the batteries up to about 92%. I don't go past that. If you learn a little bit about lithium batteries, charging to 100% is not something that we recommend to do all the time. In fact, if you're at home, you usually charge the batteries 80 to 90%, and that's more than fine for everything you're doing. Tomorrow, when I leave to go up north, I will charge the batteries to 100%. But even then, I don't really need to because I get to Perry Sound. That's about 250, 300 kilometers for me. And I can arrive there with still a good amount of charge. So in some respects, I don't really need to do 100% that way. But I don't let the batteries go less than 20%. And I do keep an eye on all this stuff as best I can. So here's the inaugural launch at Conestoga Lake, middle of August. It could not have been a better day. In fact, this screenshot of 1151 watts, that's actually on the low end. I've gotten like anywhere from 13 to 1400 watts this day here. Blue sky, no clouds. And of course, this is the day where all of us were like, okay, we know the motor runs. We tested the motor, it runs, but now it's actually pushing the boat. What's going to happen with the boat? Is there going to be, any issues with the batteries? Are there going to be any issues with the electrical? Anyways, we went out and we were out on the water for 4 hours, and we went from 92% to 55% with the batteries. And while taking the boat out, we shot back up in the hour of taking the boat out and packing it up to 65% again. So it did really well. And every boat needs a good flag. So I figured the skull and crossbones instead it to be the lightning bolt and the skull. And actually a company in Barrie printed this flag up for me. And we got some friends and family to come out on the boat. Interesting little point with Mark, who's driving the boat here. At one point he said, hey, Ian, you want to take over, drive your boat? And I'm like, sure. And he says, yeah, I'm cold. And meanwhile, the temperature was perfect. It was like a really nice 28, 29 degrees, but he was cold because the solar actually as a canopy, it created, it really kept the sun off, and it actually did get kind of cool underneath there. So there you go. So to leave you in conclusion, and this is a big one, people will argue with you, and I see it all the time. I've been doing this a long time. I've been driving electric now, going on my 7th year. And I've done renewable energy for 20 years. I hear everything. I see everything on the forums and the chats. And I'll give an example. Oh, you guys in your electric cars, when that car, the battery dies, in 5 years, the battery's dead, and then it just goes to landfill. You guys in your electric cars and your batteries, all the mining that's needed for this. Oh, your solar panels, they're not recyclable. Yeah, did you see the wind turbines? They're not recyclable. Okay, all of that are myths. First and foremost, electric car batteries do not go to a landfill. In fact, we have 2 companies right now in North America that are recycling the batteries up to 95%. And Tesla has shown they're recycling their batteries 100%. One of the companies is in Quebec. Another one is in, I think it's New York State, and it's actually on the stock exchange. So the batteries are a very valuable piece that we don't just put to landfills. I remember somebody recently posted a stupid picture of these small French electric cars in a field that were basically deteriorating, and the batteries were leaking all their stuff into the field and blah, blah, blah. No, they weren't. The batteries were taken out. Basically, there's always the actual story to what's going on. Not going into the story, but it's baloney. But here's the key thing. All energy has consequences. So if we want a battery, yeah, we're going to have to mine. If we want solar panels, yeah, we're going to have to figure out, the materials that we need for the solar panel, for the wind energy. Here's the key thing though. Green energy has what's called I call a positive loop. So a solar panel takes anywhere from 1 to 2 years of energy to manufacture. That same solar panel will then put out, usually, because the warranty is this, 20 to 25 plus years of energy. It's warranted for that. Basically, the company says that we guarantee up to 25 years that this solar panel will be 85% putting out energy. Because over time, solar panels do use a little bit of their energy absorption, but it doesn't go less than 85%. And that's what the warranty is. Most of my panels, I still have over 90% energy coming through them, no problem. Wind turbines are 5 to 6 months of energy to make a wind turbine, but again, is putting out 20 to 30 years of actual energy. Back to gas and oil. To get gas and oil is also mining. But, I saw something last night recently of somebody was saying that an argument was coming about that the grid can't handle everyone going electric vehicles. Well, hold on. Are you telling me that all of us who have our stoves on and running our dryers, when we get home, if we did a load of laundry, like charging an electric car at level 2 is the same power as a stove. It's 220 volts. And many of us, I'm sure, are using the grid to make our dinner on a stove and using the oven and stuff like that. So the grid going down is not really going to happen. In fact, Bruce Nuclear is really encouraging people to get electric cars because when we charge them, usually overnight, off peak, when it's the cheapest, that's when they have a huge abundance of energy that they're trying to get rid of. So there's something great about that. But back to the oil and gas. Oil and gas, I have, to me, I call it rotary phone technology. It has basically been a big part of our lifestyle and where we are at today. And that has to be definitely commended. But oil and gas, when it comes down to it, we mine it, we refine it using a huge amount of electricity. And for those of you who don't know, when they say, oh, your electric car has cobalt, cobalt is actually being less and less used in electric cars, but to desulfur gasoline is using cobalt. So there's an argument that's no. Anyways, we refine it, but then we have to transport the gas to get to all the gas stations. And then we come along and we work 4+ hours to pay for that tank of gas to put in our car that burns it once at 15 to 20%. So for every $10 that you spent on gas, $2 moves your wheels. Remember, 15 to 20% efficiency. I'm giving you the better end of the stick at 20% efficiency. Now, are there better cars, especially with the plug-in hybrids or just a hybrid? For sure. But here's the other problem. We are also looking at a healthcare crisis, and I'm not talking about just COVID. The gas transportation strains our healthcare in the billions of dollars. And I'm talking about asthma. One of the biggest reasons that children go to hospital is asthma. Emphysema. Cancer, of course, is, a given. I think every one of us knows somebody who's dealing with cancer or who has dealt with cancer. And it's a huge aspect of our lives. It's something we hear about all the time. But here's the last one. This is a big one, is dementia. And this one is a personal one for me because I lost my mom about 1.5 years ago to dementia. And it's one of the worst diseases I think you could ever imagine on someone. If you watch the CBC documentary called Something in the Air, it shows the Gardiner Expressway by Toronto. It shows Expressway down in Vancouver, and researchers showing what we're actually breathing in, which is a lot of heavy metal particulates, which is not burnt. So remember I was saying we burn it once, but only 15 to 20%. All the other is heat and friction and all these particulates that we don't see, and we breathe this in. And what happens, at least in the case of dementia, and they're linking this now more and more, is we have with our head, our skull and our brain, and in between the skull and the brain is called the blood-brain barrier. And the only access point to the blood-brain barrier is through our nasal passages. And if you understand anything about the Egyptians, when they mummified people, they used to pull the brain out through the nasal passage when they mummified them. And that was the only way you could get access to it. Now put in the gas transportation sector, and now you're breathing this stuff in. It goes into the brain the brain, I don't think really knows what this is, like, especially with heavy iron. And now the brain starts producing plaque, trying to get rid of this stuff. And then with dementia, if you understand, the neurons do not fire the same way, and plaque is a huge problem aspect of dementia. And basically, we can't think properly. We don't, access points for memory, for our ability to move, our hands, everything, even to simply eat, are all affected with dementia. Now, this is one aspect of dementia. There also is probably the genetic with family, that aspect too. But I think there is a huge, and it's being linked connection in that respect. So keep that in mind. No energy is without consequence, but green energy has a positive loop. Panels I put up 10 plus years ago are still rocking it on. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you would like to get a hold of me, by all means, you can contact me at the email at info@smalldogstudio.com. And you can also get a hold of me on my Twitter at Red Bartesla. For those of you who are Rush fans, you will know exactly. There's a song by Rush called Red Barchetta. So we name our cars. Stan, I don't know what you named your car, but anyways, I named mine Red Bartesla, and I got the Twitter account for it as well. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Ian. That was an extremely well done presentation and very informative. And it's nice to see that people are actually out there doing these things as you have done. We're going to give everybody just a quick chance here to ask questions directly. What I would suggest is that if you have a question at this point, feel free to unmute yourself and just jump in. Do we have anyone out there that has a question? Okay, I guess the questions were asked during the presentation, so that's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Ian, and I'd like to thank all the participants and the audience, and Jessica for helping out with this webinar. Thank you for attending. And just a reminder that there is more information on our website at sustainableaurelia.ca. So if you need to ask other questions, feel free to contact us through the website, and we'll certainly do the best we can to help. Again, feel free to contact Ian at Small Dog Studio. He's got his website up there and his information for his email. And I'd like to mention before we leave that Sustainable Aurelia is a volunteer, not-for-profit organization. And as such, we're always looking for volunteers. So again, if you're interested in volunteering for us, we can be contacted through our website, and we'd be pleased to help or pleased to have your help. And I think that concludes our webinar for tonight. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll call it a night. And everybody have a good night. Take care now.